also a very fine Marine. Our guest speaker is Major Chris Hage. He's a former United States Marine Corps armor officer. His first deployment was aboard the U.S. Pellew, an amphibious ship that patrolled the Pacific and the Middle East. His second deployment was to Iraq in 2005, where he was stationed in Camp Fallujah, Anbar Province. He held detachment commander, platoon commander, executive officer, commanding officer, and other staff billets. He currently works for the federal government and lives with his family in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And even you Army guys, let's give a big welcome for this Marine. Give it up for Mr. Major Chris Hage.
The Civil War was the deadliest conflict in United States history. After it, Americans spontaneously began to gather in the spring on days of remembrance across the country. They closed their businesses, flew flags, recited prayers, and decorated graves with flowers in tribute to fallen soldiers. On May 5th, 1868, General John A. Logan called for an official day of remembrance. He proclaimed that the 30th of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet, churchyard in the land. This day was called Decoration Day, and on its first official celebration, General James Garfield made a speech at Arlington National Cemetery, and 5,000 participants decorated the graves of 20,000 Union and Confederate soldiers buried there. It seems to me that Decoration Day continued the work of healing and reconciliation that our President Lincoln guided us towards in his second inaugural address when he said, "With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and all nations." Now in time, Decoration Day began to be called Memorial Day, and it recognizes not just the Civil War dead, but the fallen of all U.S. wars, the unbroken line of service. And Memorial Day is a fitting name, in memori, in remembrance of the dead. And that is why we are gathered here in a cemetery with our dead. We are performing the duty of recollection. This is a special place to gather today. It is the 150th anniversary of Memorial Day and the 165th year of the Minneapolis Pioneers and Soldiers Memorial Cemetery, the oldest existing cemetery in Minneapolis. The first burial here was in 1853, and buried here are many of those who shaped our city and our country. The people who do the work of memory here, the friends of the cemetery, I want to thank you. It is due to their efforts that this place is preserved as a place of honor and remembrance. Walk over there. There lies Charles Christmas. He was a territorial pioneer, the first surveyor of land west of the Mississippi. He laid out the broad, orderly streets and avenues of Minneapolis. He didn't work on St. Paul streets. There lies William Goodrich. He was born a slave, set free at 16, and by the time he was 18, owned a barber shop and went on to own businesses that made him one of the wealthiest men in York. He did not forget his past as a slave, however. He ran the Underground Railroad between York, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia. He eventually moved and died here, but his grave was forgotten until the Friends of the Cemetery rediscovered it in 2003. Over there is the grave of Mary Prescott, or Nahi no Wina, spirit of the moon. She was the daughter of Man Who Flies, a sub-chief of the Lake Calhoun Band of Dakota. She met a pioneer named Philander Prescott, one of the first traders to provision Fort Snelling. In 1823, Prescott approached Man Who Flies to ask for permission to marry his daughter. He brought gifts including 10 blankets, a rifle, a pony, and 5 gallons of whiskey. Man Who Flies took 3 days to agree to the marriage, but it took another 10 days before Mary consented. She was noted as a gracious hostess and understood French and English. Her husband, buried beside her, was killed in the 1862 Dakota War, and theirs was considered one of the great territorial romances and tragedies of the day. These are a few of the notable men and women buried here, and in a real sense, they created the order that we live in. They were the natives, the immigrants, and the pioneers, the shapers. Their lives and struggles created the space, the framework for subsequent generations to grow and thrive, and they should not be forgotten. But today is Memorial Day, when we honor soldiers who not only created the space that we live in, but they defended it, risking their lives. Here lies Asa Brown, James Glover, and John and Walter Carpenter. In the War of 1812, they fought the British Redcoats, the shock troops of a worldwide empire who in two wars knew defeat at the hands of Americans who turned their world upside down. Melatiah Jellison and John Negley are buried here. They fought the little studied and less understood Mexican-American War of 1846 through 48. Here are buried 172 Civil and Dakota War veterans, 2 kinds of Civil War, both of which pitted American against American, both of which were incredibly tragic and left us with scars which we still have today. There are 18 veterans buried here from the Spanish-American War. They helped finish off the declining Spanish Empire, the conquerors of the great Aztec and Inca empires, and who in turn were defeated. And we have one veteran of the war to end all wars, World War I, Oscar Sandel. He did his part, but wars did not end. Other veterans are buried here, men who served in uniform but not in wars, and there are yet others who we do not know, unknown soldiers whose deeds are lost in time and whose memorials simply read, a U.S. soldier. Now I could say that these men died having served God and country or the cause, and most certainly for their fellow soldiers. Military service can form a brotherhood that is impossible for those outside of it to understand. And risking your life for your brother is what really happens on the battlefield. It is as the good book teaches us, greater love hath no man than this, that one lay down his life for his friends. But those trite words almost make too immortal, too superhuman our departed veterans. I want you to understand that they were flesh and blood, living human beings. They had hopes and dreams. They loved and were loved. They laughed and cursed. They knew fear, loss, suffering, and failure. They were sinners and saints, sometimes both. They walked this land and breathed the same air as you and I, and now they are forever silent. We are here to honor them. We preserve their memory. That is the meaning of this place and of today. Now the work of our departed veterans is done. They are beyond the veil in a place that knows neither fear nor loss. They are gone, but they still form a sacred bond, an unbroken line with the servicemen and women of today, our living veterans. Our living veterans have defended us against fascism and Imperial Japan, against the communists, and against the provocation of Middle Eastern foes. Who here is a veteran? Raise your hand. Thank you for your service. And as we gather here today, there are men and women in uniform, our best Americans, right now in hot, wet, dry, and dusty places, defending us against Islamic radicals, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Boko Haram, and ISIS. And there are other servicemen sending a clear message with their presence and posture to possible foes in Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China. These are serious people, and they are watching us and constantly testing our resolve. We are now facing the most complicated international situation that we have ever faced as Americans. We cannot hope these problems away, and we should not solely blame ourselves for them. The truth is that sometimes we have made enormous mistakes, which we should reflect on, learn from, and correct if possible. Some people do hate us for what we have done, but more often, we are envied and resented for what we are as Americans. Open, free, powerful, tolerant, and great. And that is not negotiable. We should also not patronize our foes by thinking that our conflicts are all misunderstandings. When the Taliban poisons the West with heroin and says that girls should not be educated, they mean it. When ISIS destroys historical monuments, our human heritage, when they exterminate and enslave minorities, they are in earnest. When Boko Haram kidnaps schoolgirls, we are not misunderstanding their intentions. When Al-Qaeda seeks material for chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons, they plan to use them. With this kind of enemy, this kind of evil, there can be no real peace. And in time, either us or them must be turned to ashes. For these enemies, we need both our traditional allies and our friends in the Islamic world. We have all suffered from the wickedness of extremists. We are strong, but we can't do it alone. And so the need for military service for warriors for the unbroken line continues. It is, as Santayana said, only the dead have seen the end of war. This sacred bond, the unbroken line of service, is between our fallen veterans, our living veterans, and our future veterans. Now, military service is not entirely fashionable these days, but that's okay. A lot of true, good, and noble things are unfashionable. Some of you young people may feel something stir in you today. Maybe when the flag goes by, you stand a little straighter. Maybe something I said today rings true. Maybe you have a family member who served whom you always admired. Perhaps walking these grounds makes you feel that there is something deeper being called forth in you. That stirring is the call of duty. It is a seed of something great in you. It is the same seed that grew in those we honor here today. If you feel that call today, you could become a future soldier, Coast Guardsman, sailor, airman, or if you are especially troublesome, a U.S. Marine. If you choose to serve, it is unlikely that you will ever regret it. In fact, some of the proudest days of your life will be in uniform. If you serve, you will face challenges and enemies both predictable and now unimagined. You may or may not become a hero, but you will serve with heroes. And you will join the unbroken line that started with those whose lives we remember here today. The departed, the living, and future veterans form an unbroken line of service, starting even before the founding of our republic. Decorate the graves of the fallen, remember their voices forever now silent, and pray for the unbroken line, living and dead. They need your prayers. Let us pray. Thank you, Almighty Father, for those whom we remember this day, for their lives and service. May you grant that we always have such men and women, that a republic may long endure. God bless the unbroken line. God bless you. God bless America, and Semper Fidelis.
That was nothing short of absolutely outstanding. Good job, Major. That was fantastic. That was good talk. All right, now it's one of the best parts of the whole entire day, the service melodies. When your service comes up, please stand up and be recognized.